Fast and Loud once ruled reality TV, but after some cast members left the show, their lives took different turns. Some found success, others battled setbacks. Now, their stories reveal surprising twists. Join us as we find out how they are doing after all these years. How it's going for Fast and Loud cast members. When Fast and Loud left television, more than 2 years passed before fans realized just how much things had changed for the people of Gas Monkey Garage. The garage that once shook with the noise of engines and the rush of tight schedules no longer played out on screen. For years, viewers had followed every build and every deadline, but once the show ended, each familiar face began to move in a different direction. The story of Fast and Loud didn't really end. It simply spread out into new chapters, with the cast building new paths away from the cameras. One of the strongest figures to come out of the show was Aaron Kaufman. From the beginning, he had stood out. His long beard, his focused eyes, and his tireless work ethic made him unforgettable. He poured himself into every project, treating cars not just as machines, but as creations that needed care. Aaron was not simply another mechanic on the team. He became the face of craftsmanship inside Gas Monkey Garage. Yet in 2017, he decided to step away. He walked out of the doors of Gas Monkey Garage and left behind the fast-paced world of television. The official word was that it was a personal choice, but many could see the signs of someone who had grown tired of constant pressure and unending deadlines. Aaron didn't let his departure slow him down. He set up his own shop in Dallas, Texas, naming it ArcLight Fab. The focus was sharp and clear. He chose to center his new business on the restoration and customization of Ford F-100 trucks. These pickups, once scattered across American highways and farmyards, had grown rare, but Aaron wanted to bring them back. His builds honored the history of the trucks while also adding new ideas and modern features. Slowly, his shop began to gain recognition. Each project showed clean lines, smart choices, and detailed work. The shop built up a reputation that stretched far beyond Dallas, and soon car lovers across the country spoke about the trucks rolling out of ArcLight Fab. For a short while, Aaron found himself back on television. He launched his own show, Shifting Gears with Aaron Kaufman. The series followed him and his new crew through builds and races, showing how he approached cars now that he was free of Gas Monkey Garage. Fans tuned in to see him lead again, but the show didn't last long. After one season, it wrapped up, and Aaron chose to step away from television once more. This time, he threw himself fully into his shop and into projects that meant more to him. Another familiar face from the Fast and Loud years was Sue Martin. She was not a regular inside Gas Monkey Garage, yet she played a huge role in many of the builds. Sue ran ASM Auto Upholstery, and whenever a car on the show needed its interior done, she and her team were called in. Her reputation grew because of how she handled tough jobs and impossible schedules. Richard Rawlings often pushed her with deadlines that were too short, but Sue always found a way to deliver. Her fast hands made her a favorite among viewers, and her work always stood out. But as the later seasons rolled on, Sue was no longer there. Her absence was noticed right away, but neither she nor Richard offered an explanation. Fans were left to wonder why her role had ended so suddenly. Still, Sue didn't stop working. Her shop kept taking on jobs, and her name remained strong in the custom upholstery world. Even without the cameras, her business stayed steady. She had built up a solid base of customers who trusted her work, and the show had only added more recognition to her already strong reputation. Another person who carved out his place in the Fast and Loud story was Mathieu, who focused on automotive painting. For years, he worked hard to build his own paint shop into something stable and reliable. While viewers came to know him because of his appearances on the show, it was really his business that kept him moving forward. The steady flow of jobs from his shop built the foundation for his career and gave him security beyond television. When Mathieu joined Fast and Loud, everything shifted upward. The show brought in new opportunities, new customers, and more respect in the auto industry. His face became recognizable, and people connected his name to clean paintwork and bold custom jobs. Apart from the show, Mathieu also appeared in magazine features and other television programs. His work stood out because of the way he paid attention to every small detail. People admired not just his skill, but the way he approached each task. He took time to plan everything carefully and never rushed the job. That level of care helped him build a name for himself. Now Mathieu runs a successful paint shop in Fort Worth, Texas. He named it KC Paint Shop. The television exposure he got carried his work into homes across the country, while magazines and features added even more attention. This combination of media and word of mouth gave his business a strong push, keeping his shop busy and respected long after the spotlight of Fast and Loud began to fade. Christy Brimberry was more than just an office worker at Gas Monkey Garage. She was the person who kept the place running when the cameras were not focused on car builds. While the crew handled the engines, paint, and metal, she worked behind the scenes to make sure nothing slipped through the cracks. She managed the payroll, ordered the parts, and kept track of the endless flow of paperwork that came with running a busy business. Her role was just as important as those working with their hands. Her path into Gas Monkey Garage began in an unexpected way. Her husband was Richard Rawlings' longtime hairstylist, and through that connection, Christy found her way into the garage. What started as a simple link grew into a serious career. From the first days of the show until 2017, she remained a key part of the team. She earned respect not by chasing attention, but by showing up each day and handling the things that others often overlooked. But her story carried a deeper side that many fans only discovered later. In 2016, Christy faced a serious health challenge. She was diagnosed with cancer in her thyroid, and the news turned her world upside down. Surgery was needed to remove the cancer, and even after that, she had to go through radiation treatments. The process was exhausting, both physically and mentally. At first, she kept her struggle private, but she later chose to share what she had been through and finally tell people that she had recovered. After dealing with such a life-changing experience, Christy decided it was time to step away from the garage. She began focusing more on her family and on herself. The high-speed world of television, deadlines, and constant builds was no longer her priority. Instead, she found peace in a new direction, working at a salon and building a different kind of career. The shift allowed her to move into a slower, more steady phase of life, one that gave her room to breathe after so many years in the spotlight. While Christy moved into a new path, another familiar face from Fast and Loud found his way back into the car scene in a big way. Mike Coy had been one of the standout painters and fabricators on the show. His attention to detail and creativity made him a favorite among fans. Even when he wasn't on television, his work kept him in the public eye. He stayed active through social media, especially Instagram. He built a following of over 225,000 people. For a time, Mike stayed away from television and did not rush into another show. He used the platform to share photos of his projects, his tools, and the custom builds that showed off his talent. But in 2023, he made a strong return. He joined the Netflix series Tex-Mex Motors, taking on the role of shop boss and painter. The new show gave him a chance to display his abilities once again, this time with fresh challenges and new projects. Even though Fast and Loud no longer airs, the impact it made still lingers. The show was more than just cars being flipped or restored. It was about the personalities who brought their energy, skills, and determination into the garage. It was about the teamwork that kept the builds moving and the stories that unfolded along the way. Fans continue to talk about those years, remembering the fast turnarounds, the risks taken, and the moments that made the series so engaging. Today, the people who once made those moments happen are writing new stories of their own. Their journeys remind everyone that life keeps moving, and change brings new beginnings. Each person carved out a place in the larger story, and even though their time on Fast and Loud has ended, the spirit that carried the show continues to live on in the paths they have chosen. The journey through Fast and Loud. Fast and Loud grew into one of the most watched shows on the Discovery Channel, and it stood out because it mixed hard work with entertainment. The program followed a small team of skilled mechanics and builders who worked in Dallas, Texas. Their base was Gas Monkey Garage, a place that became famous for bringing dead cars back to life. Old, rusty, and forgotten vehicles rolled in, and stunning, powerful machines rolled out. At the center of this journey stood Richard Rawlings. He traveled across the country, chasing down cars that had been left to rot in barns, fields, or garages. Once he dragged them back home, the team had to tear them apart, build them up, and turn them into something buyers could not walk past. Richard started Gas Monkey Garage in 2002. Before he gave all his time to cars, he had run a printing business named Lincoln Press. When he sold that company in 2004, he finally freed himself to follow his real dream. For Richard, it was never about simple repairs. He wanted every project to carry a unique look and feel. Discovery Channel caught on to this energy and decided to turn it into a reality show in 2012. They named it Fast and Loud. From the very first episode, cameras followed Richard and his crew through the entire process. Viewers watched Richard track down forgotten vehicles, haul them back to the shop, and face the challenges that came with restoring them. Nothing was hidden. The breakdowns, the mistakes, the long nights, and the bursts of laughter were all part of what made the show real. The format clicked right away with fans. Car lovers tuned in to witness how piles of scrap turned into sleek rides. Others came for the drama and the rush of watching transformations unfold. Each episode carried the same rhythm. The team dragged in a broken car, stripped it down piece by piece, then built it back up. Some cars had not touched the road in decades. Some had no working engines, while others barely held together. The crew pushed through the stress and kept moving until the final reveal. A major highlight came when Richard and Aaron Kaufman, the top builder of the garage, entered a motorcycle build-off. This event placed them against famous names like Orange County Choppers, Jesse James, and Paul Jr. Designs. The challenge forced them to step out of their comfort zone and prove they could handle more than just cars. In the end, they finished in second place. Even without winning, the exposure lifted Gas Monkey Garage to new heights and gained them even more respect in the custom world. With the show's growing popularity, spin-offs soon followed. Misfit Garage told the story of former Gas Monkey workers who started their own shop and tried to carve out a name. Another spin-off, Fast and Loud, Demolition Theater, gave the crew a chance to sit back, look at old clips, laugh at mistakes, and relive the wildest moments. These new shows gave fans more to enjoy and kept the Gas Monkey name in the spotlight. Behind all this stood Pilgrim Studios, with producers Craig Pelagian and Eddie Rowetter keeping the pace and energy strong. Fast and Loud also built a strong presence online. In 2016, a study by the New York Times showed that the show had one of the biggest Facebook audiences out of 50 programs checked. It also had the highest percentage of male fans. That kind of support kept the series running strong for 8 years, from 2012 until 2020. However, its end did not come because people turned away. It came from deeper problems inside the team that built up over the years. In its long run, the show grew into more than just a program. It became part of a culture where people found joy in seeing forgotten things fixed up and made useful again. Every project came with struggles, but the reward showed when the finished build rolled out of the garage. Richard and his crew managed to share their love for cars with millions of people around the world, and that made all the effort worthwhile. Still, working with Richard was not always easy. Once problems piled up, most of them walked out of the shop, leaving behind both memories and relationships. Keeping up with the pressure. On one occasion, a man dropped by the garage and asked if he could stand beside Rawlings' Rolls-Royce to snap a photo. It looked like a simple request, nothing out of the ordinary. But the garage manager saw it differently. When mechanics Smith and Butler allowed the man to go ahead and take the picture, the manager lost his patience. He raised his voice, pointed fingers, and tore into them without holding back. His anger filled the shop, and he made sure they knew he was not going to overlook what they had done. Smith did not relent. Instead, he threw his own words back at the manager. He used sharp insults and made the tension grow worse. What started out small turned into something bigger. The exchange grew louder and harsher, pulling Butler into the storm as well. Before long, the shop could no longer hold them together. Rawlings stepped in and made the choice. Both Smith and Butler were told to pack up and leave. He had grown tired of their behavior and decided it was better to shut the door on them for good. It did not take long before the two teamed up with other skilled hands. One of them was Scott McMillan, who had once worked for Rawlings as well. The other was Thomas Weeks, whose bold style made him stand apart from the rest. The four men came together and decided to build something of their own. They opened a new garage and called it Fired Up. With Discovery Channel backing them, the group launched a fresh series. By October of 2014, their new show, Misfit Garage, made its debut. The program carried echoes of the work they had done before. Each episode followed the group as they tracked down old cars and gave them a second life. Sometimes owners brought vehicles in and asked for repairs or full restorations. Other times, the crew hit the road, stepping into barns, fields, or auctions to hunt down rare finds. When they brought a car back, they stripped it down and tackled it step by step. Watching them build a car was watching them bring pieces together into something fresh and strong. But the work did not always move smoothly. The four men often clashed with one another. They argued over how to fix certain parts or which design would look better in the end. Their disagreements filled the shop with energy, sometimes boiling over into heated disputes. Yet those very arguments gave the show its edge. The tension between them kept the story moving and showed the strain that comes with building something real. The long hours tested their patience, but they were determined to keep the garage running strong. The journey was filled with setbacks, but also with drive. They knew that every build was a chance to prove themselves and show they could stand on their own. The process drew out both their skill and their tempers. What they built was more than just cars. It was a battle to create a new space for themselves in a world they had once been forced out of. Even with all their effort, the road they had chosen carried bumps they could not smooth out, leaving their story hanging with both triumph and struggle mixed into every frame. Richard Rawlings' exit. In the year 2020, the run of Fast and Loud came to a stop that nobody had seen coming. For many years, the show had drawn viewers in with its mix of fast cars, creative builds, and the bold energy of Richard Rawlings and his team. Then, without a warning, the cameras stopped rolling. There was no clear explanation, and fans were left waiting for some word that it might come back. The longer the silence stretched, the more it felt like the end of an era. People kept holding on, but no return ever came. Even before the show ended, he had been thinking about where he wanted to head next. The years of filming had locked him into a tight schedule, one that often felt like it left little room for growth. Over time, another dream had started to build inside him. He wanted to explore new ways to reach people, to step away from the strict format of television and create something more free. A podcast had started forming in his mind, a place where he could share his thoughts. But moving toward that vision was not as simple as it sounded. The deal he had with Discovery came with heavy restrictions. He had signed a contract that tied his hands in ways that few could see from the outside. He was not allowed to speak against the network, and if he did, he could face fines that reached $25,000 for each slip. That kind of pressure made him measure every word he spoke. On top of that, the contract blocked him from working with other companies. The show may have looked like complete success to outsiders, but behind the scenes, it felt more like chains pulling tighter with every season. Richard kept moving forward, showing up each day, giving his full energy to the builds, but the sense of being boxed in grew heavier. Ideas piled up inside his head, yet there was no space to let them out. The team around him felt that same weight. They wanted to experiment with fresh styles, to try out different directions, but the rules of the show kept dragging them back. It was as though they were running into walls at every turn, and no matter how hard they pushed, those walls refused to break. As the seasons passed, Richard realized that staying on the same path would only trap him in the same circle. Walking away was the only way to break out, even if it meant letting go of a show that had shaped so much of his career. The choice was not easy. Years of effort and dedication had been poured into the project, but he knew that holding on would keep him stuck. To move forward, he had to take control of his own future, even if the step felt risky. Once free from Discovery, he wasted no time. He turned his focus toward YouTube, using the Gas Monkey Garage name to build something new from the ground up. With no one else in control, he could create content on his own terms. He started filming, posting, and reaching out to fans directly. Slowly, the channel began to gain strength. People who had followed Fast and Loud found their way back to him online, supporting his fresh path. View by view, the audience grew, and the community started to rebuild itself. The television show had ended, but Richard never walked away from his love of cars. The garage stayed open, and projects kept coming through the doors. The passion he carried for the work stayed just as strong, maybe even stronger, now that he was free to let new ideas come alive. The limits of the past no longer stood in his way. Concepts that had once been locked up by contracts finally had room to grow, and he poured his energy into shaping them into real content. As the YouTube channel picked up speed, each new post pulled in more support. Richard showed up often, sharing updates, showing progress on builds, and letting fans watch as the work unfolded in real time. That same spark that had powered Fast and Loud came through again, but this time it wasn't held back. It came from a place of full control, and people rallied behind him as he built a new chapter on his own terms. The end of Fast and Loud did not close the book on Richard's journey. Instead, it pushed him onto a road that carried more freedom and more promise. He took all that he had learned from years in front of the cameras, let go of what had held him down, and used it to create something different. By stepping out of the old deal and stepping into his own world, Richard showed how the close of one chapter can open the door to another, even stronger one.